I wonder if it was planned to release this movie on Mother's Day. Either way, not a bad move. La Madre. So The Mother is a brand new Netflix original action thriller starring Jennifer Lopez. Here she plays the mother. That's actually her character's name too. Let's be honest, we've all been calling J-Lo Mother since way before this movie was released. She's a former US soldier who was involved with a few men in search of fortune and trafficking weapons. But things change when she ends up pregnant and discovers that the men she's working with are also involved in child trafficking. As she approaches the FBI, she ends up in a much worse situation, which ultimately leads to her giving up her child at birth and laying low. Now, many years have gone by, and exactly what she feared would happen does. But she's stopping at nothing to save and protect her daughter. Now, the very first act of this movie is pretty simplistic, but quickly builds into something more. It kind of feels a little predictable when things start happening, but it ends up serving plot details right away, which I honestly appreciated. I was left with only a few questions shortly after, but some of them were answered right then and there. And I can't really put my finger on what it is, but I felt completely engaged after the first act ended. I wanted to see where this story was going to go, how things would eventually play out, because the situation that the mother is in is just one that can play out in many different ways. Plus, Jennifer Lopez sells this role really well. This is a completely closed in woman who has not only gone through some stuff, but has given up on everything. And that leads me to say this is the best performance from Jennifer Lopez that I've seen in a very long time. The last movie I ever watched from hers was last year's Marry Me, and it wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't my cup of tea. But whatever's in this is great! So seeing Jennifer Lopez absolutely crush it in something much more up my alley is pretty awesome. Now, Jennifer Lopez is obviously a massive star, she's a jack of all trades. But my favorite thing that she does is act. I mean, if I had to choose between her music or her movies, then yeah, her movies are what I definitely go for. Not all of them, of course, but there's no denying that she can be an absolute badass and deliver a great performance. I mean, she could be tough as nails, too. I mean, we've seen this from her 20 years ago. And that's the same actress who's in this movie. Also, Omari Hardwick is in this movie, and I really like this guy, man. He's always been one of those actors who just takes his work serious. I've seen this guy in some solid movies, and I've also seen him in some terrible movies. Yet he's always on top of his game. He's always great, no matter what. Definitely no exception here. Now, usually when a movie feels generic at some point, or does something unrealistic, I can let it slide. But at one point in this movie, we get into a chase sequence, and I just could not shake off how predictable it all plays out. And at one point, the mother stumbles upon this motorcycle that's parked in an alleyway, and she just hops on it and magically starts riding it. Like, just the second she grabs it, she's taken off. The convenience of so many things playing out a certain way just made a lot of this movie play out generically. The movie does also take a bit of a dip halfway. It's kind of weird. The middle act of this movie is by far the worst part. And it's not that it's necessarily bad, but just in comparison to the first act, it definitely takes a step back. Because the opening of this movie and the setup are so solid. And it keeps that flow pretty consistently. But then at one point, certain things in the movie start to play out, and then the movie just takes a breather. Which is totally fine for movies to do, but somehow here the tone just shifts really far off left. The suspense wears off completely. The tension is almost non-existent anymore. And instead of anticipating what's going to happen next, you're left waiting for something interesting to happen again. Now, I will give it credit, in most of the slower moments in the movie, they are trying to do certain things to add to the story and build up on certain plot details. But where the movie is at its strongest is when the mother is either kicking ass and taking names, or when she's trying to protect her daughter. Now, everything surrounding that is solid. But when the movie shifts more towards them bonding and spending time together, it just doesn't quite hit as well as it should. Their relationship should be something that's strong in this movie, but it almost is, but not quite. Now, there's a fine line between a movie doing too much or a movie doing not enough. Sometimes a movie isn't great, but isn't bad either. Now, I don't know where this movie would fall on that line, but I can say that if the movie does fall in between, it's definitely closer to great than bad. You kind of know what to expect with this type of movie, and something about that means your expectations will be met, even the good ones. Action packed? Yes. Great performances? Yes. Could it have been better? Yeah. But was it terrible? Honestly, no. Which is why the mother gets a 7 out of 10. So, how would you rank The Mother? Let me know down below. As always, your time is appreciated, and I'll catch you on the next one.